Levi gets a little excited, especially about 90s. I'm going down just a tick.
Yeah, you better take her down. Especially when I'm vibing with this thing, you know.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Snow West Show. I'm Ryan Harris, your host. We got a couple great guests here today, and we're going to talk some 90s throwbacks. But before we get to that, let me mention our sponsors here. Snow West Show is brought to you by Polaris Snowmobiles. For the month of September, you can go to your Polaris dealer and you can get a free 70th anniversary beanie. And while you're there, talk to your dealer about maybe signing up, picking up one of these limited edition sleds that just came out. More on that in a second. Polaris also will be offering up to $3,000 off select mountain sleds on the 2023 models in dealerships starting in September. So go over and check out those deals and get your free beanie. Also sponsoring the show, 320ranch.com. These guys are located up in Big Sky, Montana, Carrot Basin area, north of West Yellowstone, south of Bozeman. I mean, if you guys want to find a pocket of snow that nobody touches because the crowd is just a little farther south or a little farther north, it's this spot. I mean, it's fantastic riding. Check them out, 320ranch.com. And joining the show this year, Fly Racing. Fly Racing is the #1 gear brand in Supercross and Motocross. They're bringing that same product innovation to snowmobiling. Monosuits, helmets, boots, gloves, goggles. Fly Racing has you covered head to toe. Check them out at flyracing.com or Fly Racing Snow on socials. All right.
So you have sponsors for your podcast. Wow. It's probably because you actually do one like every week.
Yeah, but you have.
I'm working on that.
We have a program there. Similar to the sled build sponsors you have. What, did you just sell that sled?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Isn't that's cool? So that customer. He went to Chile with me. He's just a great dude. And that sled it's his dream sled. He had a 98. He's like, I mean, I love this industry because of enthusiasts like that. And, does he need that snowmobile? He even said, like, do I need the snowmobile? Hell no. But it's like it's like my dream sled, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. You got the chance to grab that thing while it's available. That's incredible.
Yeah.
These guys need no introduction. I got Chris Burandt here to my left. Other side of him, Levi LaVallee. A couple living legends of the sport. Future Hall of Famers. This is incredible having you guys both on the show, but we're going to talk 90s sled.
Levi is in the Hall of Fame.
This year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Inductee this year. That's right.
Yeah.
Man, I caught myself there. I'm like, okay, I screwed something up there. But, you're in there.
I got
absolute legends.
Speaking of Hall of Fame is really cool. I'm getting inducted into the Colorado Motorsports Hall of Fame this year. And I'm like, man, I guess that means I'm getting old. I guess that means we're getting old,
That's
Levi.
One of my
experience.
One of my favorite ones is he was my old athlete manager from Red Bull. He came out to the Hall of Fame, and he goes, "Congratulations on getting old." I'm like, yeah, thanks.
Speaking of getting old, we're going to talk about old sleds.
Well, speaking of old, look at that leather he's got.
That's coming back, dude.
Oh man, this thing is a gem. It smells like 92.
I remember my dad going out for rides, mountain sledding back in the early 90s, 92, 95 era, in leather stuff.
Oh, gosh.
And when they would get back to the cabin and just step in and peel that stuff off, and steam just, I mean, it was like a sauna.
No kidding. I mean, these things are not very breathable.
No.
Not much Gore-Tex in there.
I feel like I'm cutting weight for a wrestling meet.
Running laps in a garbage bag.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. So, Red Rocket.
Oh, gosh.
That's your honey right there.
It is. I had a Red Rocket back when I was racing back in the day. Raced junior 14, 15, and 16, 17 with a Red Rocket. And I just remember they had them 2 years in a row, 97 and 98. And I couldn't qualify to get one in 97. So when we got the letter saying, yep, you're getting one in 98, I was like, mind blown. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, it's actually going to happen because 97... Polaris had the Fab Four. It was Nathan Titus, David Brown, Corey Davidson, and Greg Hyde, and they were numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5. And they came to Duluth with the Red Rockets, and they had these fluorescent yellow numbers on them. And I'm like, dude, that is the coolest thing ever. And I remember I had a year-old race sled, and I just went, gosh, I hope someday I can be in those shoes. So it was pretty cool to be able to see that. But the Red Rocket, it is in trail in trail riding, it's so well known. Like when you mention Red Rocket, people know what it is. So when they released the 9R XCR with the retro, the throwback Red Rocket graphics and look, I just, it just makes me smile.
Well, it's funny that the RMK and the XCR, we're both looking at 97, 98s here, and just incredible years to pick if Polaris is doing a 70th anniversary thing to both land on 97, 98s there.
Well, it was such an iconic time in the industry, in my opinion, and so to talk about the Red Rocket, like so in '98, I am a very broke high school going to college kid, but I'm working at a dealership. The only reason I work at a dealership was to get the discount on parts and the discount on the sled, and and so I snow checked a 98 700, and if you guys can imagine, I was kind of into building mod sleds still back then, and so my 98 700, I ordered a Red Rocket hood and nose cone
Nice.
with the 440 decals and everything. And I meant to. I'll get you a picture, Ryan, that we could put for the podcast. But and then I had ceramic coated SLP twins, and it was literally the most beautiful mod I've ever built. Yeah. Still today, it's the one that I is my unicorn because of that sled was just. And I took a perfectly good 98 700 and basically threw it in the trash because I wanted the Red Rocket hood. I
remember Rick Ward showing up, Rick and Darren showing up to Western Snowcross races on those things. It was just like, oh man, he's just out there watching those things rip around the track. Extra 10 suspension. Yeah, I mean it was incredible what those things were doing.
Yep.
I was so jealous. And 440s, it's funny looking back now. How did we get by on 440s? Especially racing at elevation.
Oh, I can't even believe. I remember back in the day, one of the first snowcrosses that we went to, we had our mod sleds, but then we always had our practice sleds, and they were just stock 440s. Yeah. And we went out in the mountains. I remember it was Sean Crapo and I. And we were like, it was my first time ever riding in the mountains. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And I get out there and I'm like, this thing can't get out of its own way. This is terrible. So I don't know how you guys rode 440s out there back in the day.
We used to try to keep a 440 in the fleet just because the race sleds were so fun to ride.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do much with them until spring. But once the snow was cement, like April, they were so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember back in my freestyle days, so I learned right that before X Games, I learned to flip on a 440, which was
at elevation.
Oh, so gosh. It barely, and then so when I had a 600 mod for X Games, and I'm like, I wonder what it's like to flip this, and I'm like, oh my God, it's so much easier. Yeah. It actually does it. So, but I learned on it's like a fan cooled, at that elevation.
Oh, gosh.
But, so it's amazing that we used to ride 440 snowmobiles.
It is.
What's even crazier though, looking back at those sleds, jumping those sleds like we did. That's what's we do the Tri-5, our throwback race at the end of the year, and I'm riding a 2000 XC, which I remember sending that thing, and you're like,
I jumped 200 feet on one of those.
Yeah, I'm scared to get it off the ground now. I'm like, oh my goodness, we jumped this?
Yeah.
Oh, man. But you both have started collecting a lot of wedge chassis stuff, a lot of 90s stuff. You mentioned earlier, that is such an iconic era in snowmobiling, but it's also just so fun. You've got a garage full of 90s wedges.
Ryan, I only have 4.
I've seen, you've got 4 that you talk about.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Levi, I know. You posted some. It was either a 94 or 95, maybe a 93 Storm.
Yeah,
that you were ripping around on.
I got a 93 Storm, and it needs some work. The thing that Chris has is he's got beautiful vintage sleds. I don't even want to call them vintage, 90s sleds. All of mine, I have rideable old sleds. Is what I've got. I don't even know if I could sit on yours without being just don't touch it. You're getting water spots on it.
I have them to ride, but they are very. Those are the ones I wanted. I don't feel like I need a bunch of them around, but I wanted a 96 XLT RMK. That was my very first sled I ever snow checked, a 96 XLT RMK. So I have one of those. The 97 700 was just it changed everything.
That was the game changer.
Yep.
I remember when that sled came out, in the Midwest, people were buying them. And I remember they were like 136s or something.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad being like, dude, what is everyone running around with these long tracks? Like, how can they even do that? And it's funny now, like a 136, that's what we're racing on Snowcross and stuff. But back then, it was like, why are these people have all these huge sleds? And then the next year, they came out with the 700 XC, and that's Dad snow checked one of those and got to run it. And he's like, oh, now I understand why.
I see. So
that motor pulled.
It pulled, and then I have. Well, the 98 700 in Polaris's booth, that one's mine. And then I didn't have one of these. My dad did a 96 Ultra, and really just because it looks badass.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't run very good in the mountains. They were actually pretty terrible. But the sound of a Ultra with triple pipes is I mean, you know, that's my funeral song, right?
There we go.
That is the one. Yep.
Oh, I got to remember that one. Oh, geez. No, and like the 91 RXL, when it was, EFI was just coming out, I remember as a kid, like ripping around on that thing, and you had to push that little gray button to get the EFI set up before you pulled the rope. And if you got the timing off, it was just a disaster. But yeah, we had a 95 Storm. That's why the Storm hit near me, because we had a 95 Storm RMK. And I pulled the hood off of that for spring riding, and I took the silencers off, so I just had the triple pipe, because it's factory triple.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And just had the stingers hanging out there.
Just barking.
That's why
Plug your ears and go.
Why this is turned up so much. Can't hear us.
Geez, that's why I have to ask my wife. My only word that I know is what?
What?
Oh, geez. No, but it's awesome having you guys on here. What's your most memorable race, like, from that area?
Memorable race from that era. I remember, I remember endoing my Red Rocket. I remember that. You know, it was kind of a sad thing. I was like, I really wanted that XCR, and we finally got it. I made it through the first two races, and I won. I won at both of them. We were in both junior classes, so I won the 16, 17, and then, you know, it was third and 14, 15, and I swapped that the next weekend. And I remember we went to a regional. And I still had the bumper on it, and like all the pros would take it off. And then my dad's like, "Well, goodness, you run into someone, you're gonna bust up that nose cone. That nose cone's like $200, you know." So I'm like, "Yeah, we got to keep that bumper on." So I kept the bumper on, and I endoed into something, and that bumper hooked, and it just pulled the whole front end underneath it. I went flying off. But I would say probably one of my most memorable races was in 2000. It would have been 2001. It was in the open class, or semi-pro open, I should say. And I remember we were still independent, and we had, like, we'll call it the C class, or the C mod. We had a little 726, and they had two other, like, close to 800 mods that the better guys had. And so we take off, and there was Aaron Christensen was on Factory Polaris that year, and he had the hopped up mod, and I've got the little mod. So we take off. Those guys all leave me, and I was like kind of probably 8th, 9th place. And I take off, and I'm like picking away at Duluth, and I'm passing all these guys. And in the past, I would pass guys and then it would fall off. So this year, I was like passing all these guys, and they go white flag, and I keep going, and I made it to the finish line, and I was like so excited. I'm like, I don't know what place I'm in. I know I passed a bunch of guys, and I didn't fall off. So I threw a heel clicker, and I remember the guy in the corner, the flagger in the corner, he's like just fist pumping. Yeah, you know. So I go over there and I high five him. And I'm like, what place did I get? And he's like, you won, man! You won! I was like, yeah! So I was so excited. So that race, like, it'll always stand out to me as one that was pretty memorable.
Yeah. And, you know, Snowcross back then, late 90s, early 2000s, we just covered the Western stuff. We had the Snowquest Snowcross in West Yellowstone. And just the mod sleds there, like you were talking about, Nathan Titus, Chris Vincent, all these guys coming out there and racing. Just a wild time back then.
It was so cool. I'll never forget, you know, like the Crapos and having those Holtz built crazy swing arm suspension.
The big red ones.
Yeah.
Coming off, it was like a 98 XC 700 or something.
Yeah. I looked at those type of sleds and just, oh, man. And, you know, and so that was that Indy style, 97, 98, and then 99 and 2000 they went to the newer chassis. And you know, that was a sled. So at the time I wouldn't say I was racing snowcross, but I was doing snowcross. But I was doing it just because, like, that's how, I mean, in the snowmobile world, that's how you, like, made money.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't make money doing it, as we know, but like, that was the route. I mean, there was no backcountry riding at the time or anything like that. So and I just liked jumping. So, you know, I'd go to West Yellowstone every year and do the semi-pro there. And I remember I went up to Seeley Lake one time, and I don't know what happened, but I got a good start in semi-pro, and I held off one of the crapos.
Oh, wow.
And I remember, like, 2 laps to go, I could not stand up anymore. And all I would do is just so one-lined.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there, like, trying not to fall off. I was Levi, when you're describing, like, I would be kind of fast and then just fall off, like, that was me to a T. I mean, you know, first few laps I could actually do a couple things, but then yeah. So anyway, I mean, I was chuckling while you were talking about that, but just like the history of that, and like it's crazy how different it is now.
Yeah.
You know, it's semis and TV and like it's different. I mean, it was really like guys like Kirk Hibbert showing up in jeans with knee pads on the outside, and like it was cool. It was just a different vibe, obviously.
When everybody got their start in snowcross and racing cross country back then, and then like Courtney Hungerford comes along, is like, I'm going to skip the racing part, and be a freestyle guy.
Yeah.
And then kind of changed that aspect of it, and then you went from racer to freestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting thing. It was, I've always liked jumping. I think as I reflect back on my life, I love snowmobiling, but I think one of the driving passions that have led me everywhere is jumping.
Dude, launching Levi, LaVallee.
I just love jumping, whatever it is. And it's funny because even behind the boat, like wakeboarding is like, I don't want to say it's like a dying breed, but you know, when you tell people you wakeboard, they're like, well, you strap it right to your feet? You know? I'm like, yeah, because everybody surfs now, like, because it's like easier and all the young kids surf and stuff. And I'm like, I can't jump that thing. I can't jump a surfboard. So I don't know. Jumping is just
jumping is pretty cool.
That's my thing.
Yeah,
it's pretty wild. Well, I know you got to run, Levi, but man, it's been great having you guys on here talking this '90s stuff. We could probably go on for hours.
Oh gosh,
story after story.
We were going, I was like, I could sit here all day. I love hearing the stories.
Go find some more leathers and let's keep collecting stuff. And
I'm sure there's some out in the swaps. We probably get a couple for you by the end of the day.
Oh yeah, I've got some old stuff. We've got a pile of that stuff at home too. But I need to go walk around there. But yeah, you guys together, you know, you kind of kicked off this limited edition deal with Polaris. You know, you were building these for the last few years.
Yeah.
And just iconic stuff, you know, doing the XLT, like you said, the Ultra. Like I said, nobody's done an RXL yet. I want to see that.
I know, RXL could be the one.
But the Storm stuff and the Red Rocket, like, this is just incredible.
Polaris really did do a good job, and you know, they just, I think, you know, it's their 70th anniversary, obviously. But, you know, the people at Polaris, they are snowmobilers as well. And I think that's, you see that in, you know, when you go to Roseau and you're just driving around, like, there's Indies parked in people's yards. And I mean, it's a real passion. That's something you can't fake. And so, you know, they were really proud to come out with these, and it's cool to see the consumers as pumped as we are with them, for sure.
For sure. All right. Chris Burandt, Levi LaVallee, thanks for coming on the show. You guys, catch you next time.
Okay.
I might light up a heater here and.
It's looking pretty good, dude. It's pretty tight.
Gosh.
And they're shortcuts, so
they were. So I have another one, an XCR one, and it's a medium tall.
Really?
Oh like, my god! Really? I'm like, this thing barely goes down to my waist, you know. And I have like a short toaster on them, not very big anyway.